Hi, this is Zenzo Tazawa from Tazawa Tanks, and you're listening to the IndieEye Film Awards podcast.
You are now listening to the IndieEye Film Awards podcast.
Welcome to the IndieEye Film Awards podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Dre.
And we are here to talk about submissions and winners for June of 2022 for the IndieEye Film Awards online film festival thing with a podcast, whatever we are.
And periods in between every single one of your words, apparently.
Well, hello to everybody listening. And if you are listening for the first time, I need everyone to understand that this podcast exists not only to talk about each month's film festival submissions, but it exists to help all of us as an indie filmmaking community. So maybe you're listening and you don't have something to submit, or you did submit something and you really only want to hear if we say anything about your project, which I get it. I understand. Everyone's got limited time. Why would you listen to us? But what I'm telling you is that we show up every month, on time, by the way.
Go us.
And we give you feedback from real people who sort of know what we're doing. We sort of know what we're talking about.
Well, you definitely do.
People would argue differently.
I doubt that.
But it's a great resource because you can hear our feedback about other films and learn from what stands out about other films, or what other films may get critical feedback about technically or storytelling-wise, things that go wrong. And this can help you learn from others, or maybe it inspires new ideas for you in your crew, or in your writing, or in how you shoot something. Maybe what you choose to invest in your next indie film project.
Hashtag microphones.
We'll be talking about audio, surprisingly. What I'm saying is, I encourage everyone to listen to the entire podcast. I encourage everyone to listen monthly to the entire episode of IndieEye and see if there's anything you can learn, or if there's something we say that may apply to you, or how you see filmmaking, or how you can kind of carve your craft around this feedback that we're giving to others.
And just a reminder, this is our second year doing this podcast, so we have many previous episodes that you can go back and watch, with winners pages where you can watch the projects. On some of the projects you can watch, but listening to older episodes is also cool too. You could totally just binge our podcast. And
it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, other places where you would probably locate a podcast. And we have specific interview episodes where we get to speak with actors or directors, animators, people who have been featured in IndieEye Film Awards and then have made some time to come on and speak with us about their experiences. So there's just so much to learn just from our little spotlight here. And one of those things you might have learned is that we would prefer those who submit to IndieEye submit to a main category and not just a subcategory. If you're submitting your short film for only Best Actor, but you didn't throw your hat in the ring for narrative short film, I'm taking you a little less serious. And those who did put in for narrative short film and Best Actor and maybe Best Cinematography, those things are going to get a little more weight when we're doing the judging at the end of the month.
Just a little nugget of advice.
But before we continue on with the episode, Dre, let's tell the people what we're watching around here. What are you watching lately?
Lately, I've been watching true crime on Discovery Plus. They have a whole true crime section on Discovery Plus, and I'm watching a show right now called Murder Tapes, which is all true crime, but every bit of the interview, the it's just all caught on tape. So it's either from body cam footage, surveillance footage, things are caught on tape, and that's kind of how they catch the killers, which is really cool. So that's what I'm watching right now. Totally binging it.
That sounds like it's right up your alley.
Absolutely is.
Well, I've rekindled an old flame and fallen back in love with the kids from Hawkins and have really enjoyed season 4, volume 1.
Yes,
at this time.
It was very good so far.
Of Stranger Things. Now, I loved season 1. We loved season 1.
Yes, we watched that together.
Season 2 was an absolute mess.
We did watch season 2 together, right? And
yes.
Yeah. It was rough.
We got through season 2 together.
And I was kind of turned off, and you watched season 3.
I watched season 3 and loved season 3. And then we're both back for season 4. And they've just really, they kind of found their footing in season 3, really. And then now it's like high level cinema quality every episode. It's giving you what you want.
Agreed.
And listen, all of us out there trying to be artists and subvert expectations. That's not always a good thing. Sometimes we just want what we want. You order a pizza, you want to open the box and see a pizza. If I order a Star Wars movie, I want a Star Wars movie. And not whatever The Last Jedi was. Props to Rian Johnson for doing whatever the hell he wanted. But what I'm saying here is that Stranger Things is giving me exactly what I tune into Stranger Things for.
It's hitting the mark.
Just fun with the kids and fun storytelling, and it gets a little weird, but it's all really good. And I think they've just done a superb job with really with every aspect of storytelling and filmmaking. It's got me so glued to it. But another thing we started up together is...
Speaking of storytelling and good filmmaking.
If you're not watching The Old Man on, I think...
It's a FX.
It's FX. We're watching it on Hulu, but it's an FX show with Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow, and wow.
Legit. It's so legit.
Based on a book, and so far, there's been 3 episodes?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a 7-episode season. It's fantastic. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's got little twists and turns, but it tells stories magically.
The writing's brilliant. Cinematography's brilliant. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
So listen, here's how this episode is going to go. We had kind of a weird month in June. Not a lot of submissions in June, but we did get a wide variety of things. And I'm going to be honest with the listener right now. It's weighted very heavily towards 2 particular submissions.
That were very, very good and worthy.
And so a lot of awards are going to 2 particular films. And we've got some honorable mentions. But I want everyone to listen all the way through this podcast for 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm going to give some feedback on a couple of films that were not winners at the end of this podcast. And I think it's important for everyone to hear. I certainly think it's important for these filmmakers to hear. The second reason I think anybody should listen all the way through this episode of the podcast is I'm going to make a very special announcement to filmmakers who listen to this podcast all the way through. There's going to be a little something extra at the end that may help you. It may apply to you. And I haven't thought this through about how I'm going to tease this, but I guess I just did. So
there's your teaser.
There will be some important information if you're a filmmaker and have things to submit in the very near future for IndieEye. I'm going to talk about that at the end, if I remember also.
Cool.
So here's how this episode's going to go. I'm going to talk about these couple of monsters that were submitted to us this month that have a handful of awards attached to them. Then we'll do the honorable mentions. Then we'll do the feedback. And we'll try to get it in and out of this as quickly as we can because guess what, people? We're busy.
Not that it's a badge of honor or anything.
Well, we say that every time.
It's just
But we do have to turn this
we gotta
around. But my point of saying that is that I'm kind of thankful that the submissions were relatively low this month. Because I just don't think we could have fit in a longer podcast or more prep work or more watching.
Yeah.
And we will have a couple of new written reviews up on the website, IndieEyeFilmAwards.com, which if you're listening to this by now, you will see that the June 2022 winners page is up. It's published. It's public.
Yep.
Public. And you can go check it out.
You mean like calls from the public?
If you know what that is referencing, leave that in the comments below on the YouTube video, I guess, because you can't leave comments on the podcast.
Yeah.
But if you know what calls from the public is from, you're an awesome person.
Yes.
And
you are our people.
Okay. So, we're going to start off with a submission with a familiar name, a young gentleman by the name of Benjamin Hunt. And let me tell you a little bit about Benjamin Hunt, because he's a 22-year-old filmmaker. You little shit, Ben. He's based in Los Angeles, but he's a recent graduate of Dodge College in Film and Media Arts at Chapman University with a BFA in film production with an emphasis in directing.
Which he does very well.
He does well.
Yeah.
He's okay. Well, and he's got a great team around him. He knows how to source good talent to also help him tell stories. And Benjamin he's had previous submissions, and the one that always stands out to me the most was Peaches, which I believe was right at the end of last year. Just beautiful little storytelling. I mean, the guy's really good at what he does, and he's just getting better. I mean, the arrow's only pointing up on Ben, and I'm so glad he continues to share with us and be part of this. And I think I've said this before, but I've got to reach out to you, Benjamin, and see if you'll come on, do an interview, and kind of talk to the people a little bit about your film school experience and just what it's like making these wonderful short films. So Benjamin Hunt submitted Transient, and this is a narrative short film about Gray, good name, who is faced with a difficult decision, forcing him to reflect on his past if he wants to move forward. So it's kind of funny because as soon as I see, Benjamin submitted another film, I'm like, that's going to be worth my time to watch.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an enjoyable experience. And I was right, because Transient is a well put together short film where the craft of filmmaking is just executed beautifully. And the lighting and cinematography are excellent. For me, I wish there was a little more in the opening to fill in the character of the protagonist, because we open where the protagonist is in a very dark place.
Yeah, and we don't know how he gets there. And I do feel like that's important.
I feel like, being a filmmaker myself, I would have tried to work in with the camera work or something to kind of give us more about his situation and why he's trying to do what he's doing at that point.
And there was some of that. In the opening shots, they do show things in the props that led you to believe he was in a dark place, or that someone was kind of struggling. But it's just a scenario. It's not about that person. And so I did feel like that was just a little flat for me as well.
Yeah, and these are minor gripes in short films, and this is just the kind of feedback I think is valuable.
Yep.
Because everything else was done so well. And I thought Sam H. Clotter II as Arthur was absolutely great. I think he's the heart and soul of this short film.
Nice.
Benjamin has some gutsy kind of After Effects choices, and I think they paid off really well. I think the premise is really solid. I just never quite bought into the lead actor due to the kind of lack of character development. I always just felt like he was reading lines and serving his purpose to tell the story instead of me being invested in what his decisions might be. I didn't really care what he chose.
On a lighter... go ahead.
Well, go.
Well, because it's on that same vein. When they're both looking at the thing, they're both looking at the same thing together, and there's supposed to be some emotion. I did actually feel like he executed, the lead actor executed that well. I did. So I just wanted to say it's not about him as an actor.
Right.
I did feel like that was a high point in his reaction to the things that they were looking at together. So bonus there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think if you give Benjamin Hunt and his team like a feature budget, you would just enjoy the profits eventually. So, I mean, he's done it again here with Transient and has won Best Narrative Short for June of 2022.
Yay!
And I hope Scott Larson is listening, because this guy is a tremendous cinematographer. I love the combination of Benjamin's directing and Scott's cinematography, the lighting, just everything is always so thoughtful and cared for. And so Transient has also won Best Cinematography.
Yay!
And as a standout, Sam H. Clowder II, as Arthur in Transient, is taking home our Best Supporting Actor award.
Yay!
And because we're never done
with
Benjamin's stuff, Benjamin is taking home Best Sound Design for Transient.
Yay!
So they kind of cleaned house here, didn't they?
A little bit, yeah. But worth it. I mean, they totally earned it. The sound design was amazing. Everything's so clean. Everything makes sense. I know some sounds have to be added afterwards, but they made sense where they were. It flowed well. The music was brilliant. Everything sounded good.
And this is a result of being very thoughtful and intentional with what you're creating. Like, it's totally okay. Grab a camera, go make something. I'm an advocate for all of that. But when you do take the time, as Benjamin does, as Scott Larson does, and think things through and set things up properly and have an intention and a motivation to show what you're showing, to block properly, to frame properly, it will make your art stand out.
Yeah, it pays off.
Against those who are just grabbing a camera, shooting what they can. So in a competition, that's what you're looking for. The storytelling's got to be good. The ambition has to be there. The enthusiasm has to be there for filmmaking. But then once you have all that and you're taking care of the craft, the technical aspects,
so that it's enjoyable for the audience. Remember, your customer is the audience. You are not your customer. Mm-hmm. You will always like your project. You need to convince somebody else that your project is worthy of their time. And it has to be the whole package.
Yeah, you're there to entertain the audience, not yourself.
Exactly.
And every single director, filmmaker, writer, etc. has been guilty of that. It's just natural.
Because you do create for yourself. You want to enjoy what you're working on, and that's not selfish or anything. But in the end, it is for other people.
Absolutely. So we have the Instagram link for Transient up at IndieEyeFilmAwards.com and the winners page for June of 2022. But I also encourage everyone to seek out Benjamin's previous work, follow him on Instagram, keep up with what this guy is doing, because he does great work. Everyone involved does great work. So thank you for submitting. The next black hole of awards we're presenting here.
Negative.
No. Well,
is it because they sucked them all in? Is that your metaphor? Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll roll with it.
These both with Benjamin's Transient and this next piece, they're just submissions with so much gravity.
Yeah.
That it puts us in a tough spot, especially particularly with this next one, because as if I'm a business person and I'm trying to run IndieEye, maybe I want to kind of give a little something to everyone so that my advertising
this ain't 5-year-old soccer.
Well,
okay, not everybody gets a trophy.
Right, but in my ideal world, I would like to give a little nod to everybody who submits so everyone can feel good. And I try to preface everything by saying if you have made a film and a project and you've submitted something, you that's your award.
Yeah. And that still stands.
We're always just two people doing a podcast once a month. Our opinion is a small sample size of anything else you may receive regarding feedback for your film. But sometimes, and in months where submissions are relatively low, and there's a couple of good submissions that not only have submitted to their main categories, but they've thrown their hat in the ring for other subcategories.
It shows their confidence.
That's exactly my point. And these two films that we're mostly dealing with this month have a lot of the right things. So at the end of the month, I've got to remind myself what our true north is as an event or a podcast, whatever it is we are. It's to speak the truth about the submissions we receive and not play the game of, let's try to figure out a way to get an award to everybody.
Yeah.
And this is just one of those off-balance months where it's kind of heavy one way or the other. But we received a submission to Comedy Short called Game Night. And if you've been listening to IndieEye Film Awards, you might be familiar with the names Mally Corrigan and Dante Albane. Mally and Dante made The Alpines, which was our first ever big IndieEye winner back in February of 2021.
Yep.
And I just learned today that The Alpines has gone on to win 80 awards.
That's so cool.
In its festival run.
That's so cool.
It's had a fairly successful streaming run, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen The Alpines yet, find where you can stream it. Directed by Dante Albane, written by Mally Corrigan, also starring Mally Corrigan, and a wonderful cast.
Yeah.
The Alpines is just a fun watch. The awards are well-deserved. Congratulations to Mally and to Dante, to the actors involved, for it was an 11-day location shoot, so many issues. We have an interview with Mally, we have an interview with Dante separately on our previous episodes. You should hear these stories.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to hide this, but I've become sort of friends with Mally and Dante.
Yeah.
We communicate. I support them greatly. And they're about to win some awards here. And I'm just, I'm trying to be honest and transparent.
Transparency.
This is how it shook out. IndieEye doesn't exist to give my friends awards. It's to award the things that come across
that are deserving.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm doing a lot of qualifying here before we talk about this. But let's talk about Game Night.
Let's talk about it.
Which is directed by Dante Albane, written by Mally Corrigan, and features a handful of the actors also involved in their other projects. And the premise is, a young couple invite their closest friends over for a game night they'll never forget. And what it is just a fun and loose short film with enjoyable interactions, laugh out loud moments. I particularly, especially after like the third watch, the dog bit in the beginning, I really appreciate. And then there's a callback to it.
Yep.
And the very first time we watched this, I completely missed that whole thing. And I love that. There's a Cheers reference I love. And it's just this filmmaking team, they just kind of hit the things I'm looking for personally. I really relate to what they do.
Yeah. They have a natural way about their writing, their conversations, how they interact with each other, how the characters interact with each other. It's very natural.
And of course, casting is directing. And this delightful ensemble makes this short something you can revisit over and over and enjoy. And I came away smiling from it. And, I go into something, there's probably a little bias there, but I'm going to be honest, and sometimes people hate me for that, but I immediately texted Dante and I'm like, that was great. We really enjoyed watching that. Yeah. We laughed and we had a good time. And I would love to talk about the plot more, but we're not in the business of spoiling things that aren't publicly viewable. So there's not much I can say about it, but it takes place just in one location. It's one house. The props are simple. The cast it's not a huge cast. It's manageable. And it's something they did fairly quickly, but did very well. And for that, Game Night is our best comedy short of June 2022.
Yay!
But comedy's hard. It's hard to pull off. It's hard to pull off the timing. And being that casting is directing, it really helps when you cast people who get it, who have that natural funny bone and know the timing and know how to deliver things. Because if you don't have that, everything is going to fall flat.
Right. It'll be very apparent that you don't know.
And managing a handful of actors in a comedy is a task in and of itself, along with handling the cinematography and then the editing and taking care of all the logistics. That makes Dante Albane our best director for June of 2022.
Yay!
And in a role in which I think she truly thrives.
Yes.
Mally Corrigan delivers a very natural but lighthearted and endearing performance, I believe, to be our best actor of June of 2022.
Yay!
Of course, Mally is just one piece of the puzzle.
I see what you did there. Games.
Because Game Night also leans on the talents of Aaron Lotta Morissette, who's been involved with IndieEye in the Alpines, Nightclubbers.
Yep.
Michael Tavera, who is also in the Alpines, is in this, along with Jesse Mack, who was also in the Alpines. And the Alpines is not a comedy.
No, it's not.
It's a very heavy. So it was just really pleasant to see these actors in this different genre and just enjoying it. It really showed that they had a fun time just shooting this thing. And Brendan Kefner adds so much to this ensemble. This collective and their combined chemistry is what really makes Game Night shine. And that's why they've earned Best Ensemble Cast for June of 2022.
Yay!
So there, I gave all my friends awards because I could. Now, this is great, and I hope they make Game Night publicly viewable at some point, because these films that they do, they're just so much fun. And, you know, Game Night does not consist of some giant budget.
Right.
Or big set pieces or special effects. It's a collection of people who love to make film, people who love to act, throwing their talents together and doing something fun and letting some lightning strike, catching it in a bottle, and then showing it to people.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite kind of stuff.
Very cool.
And then as an IndieEye first, we received a simple MP3 file as a submission for our best original music song or score. Now, we get music videos all the time. There's certainly music or movie scores, things that
People
we deal with, specific songs that are in specific films. Those things have been submitted for, but this is the first time we received no video attached.
Yeah.
Just a song as best original song, which in the rules for IndieEye, this is perfectly reasonable to submit that. And this track is called What I've Been Through by, and I'm just guessing here, Famoe.
That sounds right.
Famoe.
Yeah.
And we've linked the Instagram, website, everything over at IndieEye Film Awards. But this was a solid track, and it stuck with me. And having had experience in indie music, growing up in a recording studio, doing all that, I appreciate the effort and the message. And it was just not plain, but it was just a good song. It's a good track.
Yeah, it has a super cool hook and cool beat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it deserves Best Original Song that was submitted to us for June of 2022.
Yay!
So congratulations. But now we'll scoot it along to the honorable mentions.
Yeah, that's all the awards that were given for June.
Yeah, now, the honorable mentions certainly have their merits. And there's things I want to say about them. The first one I want to talk about is Tape Boy, directed by King DeWitt. And the premise is, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues, eccentric bedroom musician Tommy Doss is invited to lunch by the connection-starved Lucy, who is taken by his enigmatic personality and homemade tapes. Now, this hits me right in the heart because I grew up making mixtapes.
Yes.
And the Pause mixtapes. Who made Pause mixtapes? Anybody out there? God, I made so many mixtapes. Tapes, kids, are cassettes. Oh, cassettes, kids.
Let's take it way back.
Are reels of recorded media.
Gosh, how do you even explain
we all know what tapes
it?
are, but King DeWitt says himself in the bio that Tape Boy is my love letter to low-budget film strips, DIY psychedelic rock, experimentalism, and isolation in both meanings during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I thought that was a really great summary of the style from Tape Boy. And I'll say this. He really does lean into the low budget. And that can work so many ways for indie filmmakers. When you don't have the budget, it's better to not try to make it like you have $1 million budget if you don't. And so that's fine. And what I love is that King DeWitt stays true to his vision. It's not my flavor, but it's his flavor. And I think there's absolutely an audience for it. I wouldn't want to see him deviate from his own true voice. But in the end, this is a competition.
Yeah.
So when you have a short film that checks all the boxes, technically does also tell a good story, and, has that shine or that gloss on it, not everything's going to make it. But I thought Tape Boy is a great representation from King DeWitt. He should be very proud. His team should be very proud having made this. And I look forward to seeing what he does in the future, because I think he's just got his own style. And while it's, not something I gravitate towards, I think it's really, really cool for him.
Yeah.
Another honorable mention that we have on the list, and actually this is almost 2 honorable mentions, because Adrian Campbell submitted Dissension and Dissension Part 2. And these are kind of uneven offerings, because one is 12-ish minutes, the other one's 45 minutes. And they were both submitted under narrative short, which is appropriate. Well, here's the premise for Dissension. A Marine suffering from PTSD goes into the woods to be alone when he encounters 2 guys responsible for killing officers and stealing millions in cash. Now, here's what I like. Adrian Campbell has a big vision here. He's doing like action. He's tackling PTSD. There's so much he's reaching for here, but he's doing it on like no budget and just a ton of ambition and drive, which is good. But for 45 minutes, that's a lot to ask of an audience. So much has gone into this, and you can just tell it's a labor of love for Adrian. This is a man who has big stories to tell, and I love to see that. And he's willing to grab a camera and just go. The problem is that the technical fundamentals suffer in the process. Now, this is a talented storyteller. He's building a nice resume.
And learning.
Right.
Yeah, which is super important.
What Dissension, in my opinion, and Adrian's the filmmaker here, it's his film, he can do whatever he wants with it. In my opinion, Dissension probably would be best served as a web series.
Okay, like in breaking it down into smaller chunks?
Right,
Okay.
exactly. I just think that's where Adrian might find a better groove to tell his stories.
Maybe a little easier for the audience to digest as well.
Right.
Okay.
And here you have a couple of offerings that, unfortunately, overall, is just a bunch of stuff happening. And I didn't feel like there was a lot of character development going on.
Yeah.
These are things he will just ultimately get better at. I have no doubt about that. And I do love that Adrian is incredibly ambitious. He's willing to do graphics and put in special effects and do a lot of things that take a lot of time and effort into what he's doing. But where it suffers for me is kind of the run and gun camera work. The audio is a giant challenge because of how much he's taking on himself in making this, and that's completely relatable to a lot of filmmakers.
Yeah.
So for me, it didn't quite work with our other submissions this month, but certainly an honorable mention, if only based on the pure ambition and drive that Adrian Campbell has. Now, a third honorable mention we have is called The Second Act, directed by Victor Fontura. And this is a short film based on a true story about a young actor who is harassed by a talent agent and decides to take matters into his own hands. I did not like this film, and nobody should like this film. But I only say that because Victor does a great job in making the audience feel as uncomfortable as the protagonist feels. So I'm saying this in a good way.
Yeah, it hit the mark as far as how to make you feel something.
Right, and I don't know if Victor is telling a personal story or a story he's very familiar with, but it is a very challenging story to tell, especially how he tells it. There is a really uncomfortable situation between this young actor and this quote-unquote talent agent.
Yeah.
And it progressively becomes uncomfortable. And it gets to this part where I thought, initially when I'm watching, this is one step too far. Victor, you know what I'm talking about. We've gone one step too far in this indie film. But in retrospect, I was like, wow, it was brave. It was bold to go there. It was done well. And it really does force that visceral, uncomfortable takeaway that you're trying to get the audience to feel. And I thought that was done masterfully. The actors are good. I would say the sound definitely needed help. But overall, the combination of technical choices was solid. And Victor took this challenge of an incredible personal and disturbing story and showed it to an audience very well. It might be about 5 minutes too long. Like that third act is probably too long for my liking. Well, there's plenty of things in this that are not to my liking. But as a craft, Victor did a great job making this, and it's certainly deserving of an honorable mention. And, I could see this getting a lot of love in other festivals. So that was The Second Act by Victor Fontura. Now we're going to get into some difficult feedback.
So these are not honorable mentions.
Right. Not honorable mentions, not category winners. These are films that I felt were certainly... Their official selections, absolutely.
Okay.
They're deserving of discussion. And sometimes we talk about, well, here are all our winners and goodbye. And we neglect...
because we have a lot to cover.
That's true.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are opportunities to talk about films that are not winners and give the reasons why.
Absolutely.
And I've said this before, but anybody who submits a film, if you have any questions about how we judged your film or the reasoning behind things, or sometimes things are official selections and they don't get brought up on the podcast, just because of the number one time. We can, certainly if you're an official selection, you're in the competition. You have qualified to be considered for the categories you've selected.
Yep.
Period. But we can't talk about everything. But this is a good opportunity to talk about a couple of things we got. And the first one is called A Matter of Trust, directed by L.T. Hewitt. And the premise here is the relationship between an asexual and an assault survivor hits a rough patch when the pair make false assumptions. So, okay, there's a premise. It's not particularly an interesting premise to a wide audience.
Correct.
So there's the first mistake.
Yeah. Which,
okay, I think filmmakers should make whatever they want and use their voice to say whatever they want. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But there can be consequences to that. If I want to make a movie that's very narrow in my target audience, it's going to be rough to find some footing in a wider audience. And I'm saying wider audience, not whiter audience, just to be clear. WIDER. Well, you got to find a wider audience for your film, I'm telling you. Don't you have anything about cheese sandwiches?
Oh my God.
Okay, sorry. I can say that because I'm white.
Okay.
Right?
Are you though?
I'm something. But so here's my feedback for A Matter of Trust. It commits two of the deadliest cinema sins in this whole IndieEye thing. It's really it's bad sound, and it's this odd mix of, I know you're using a microphone, I just don't know if you took it out of the bag or if you brought it into the room with you.
Like, where is it?
I don't know where the microphone is, but the sound, it's distant. There's a lot of reverb. You can really hear the room, so it makes it sound incredibly amateur. And so, hey, sometimes, you don't have a whole crew. We're indie filmmaking here. Sometimes you just got to make do with what you have. But wherever the mic was, if it's a boom mic, the boom op is not doing their job because it's not on where the actors are.
Yeah, it's not close enough.
If you just set a microphone up and pointed it towards where the actors are, it's not close enough. Well, maybe you couldn't get it close enough because of how the shot was.
The shot.
Then you need to change your shot and get the microphone closer. Good sound is more important than your frame. If you don't have a sound or a boom operator, someone managing the sound for you, wireless mics, especially for a small cast, this is really just two people talking throughout the whole thing.
We'll get to that later.
A couple of Rode Wireless Go's would really go a long way. And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of post-production going on with the audio either. So just the audio from the start, very bad, very unpleasant. And anybody who's listened to this podcast before knows I complain about audio.
Yeah.
And this is an important thing in filmmaking. And as filmmakers, we can get excited about, what camera did we get? What camera should I have?
And spending the most of your budget renting the best camera possible.
Buying.
Which is not necessary.
Handle how you're going to capture good audio first and then work around the rest of it. And I say this as someone who loves cinematography over any sort of sound design. I've learned through experience, it's the sound design, after hours and hours and hours and hours of editing throughout my life, it's the sound design that makes things so much better.
And the second cinema sin?
The second cinema sin is that A Matter of Trust is incredibly boring.
It was kind of a snooze fest.
Now, perhaps that's subjective. Maybe if you're someone who is asexual and or also someone who is an assault survivor, maybe it's more interesting
or relatable to you.
And that would be fine. But this is a short indie film where two people talk. And that's pretty cliche, and you better find an interesting way of doing it. An interesting way to move the camera. It's
interesting conversation even.
There's not, it just doesn't escalate. There's no story structure really. It's just two people talking. So LT Hewitt is a guy who's got this ambition, and I want to see him work on these points and just add a little bit more to his art. There was focus hunting in the cinematography. That shows carelessness. The editing sorely lacks J&L cuts, and if you don't know what J&L cuts are, Google it. You search it on YouTube. Guys, when in your dialogue editing, J's and L's, please, let's tighten this up, make it feel more natural, organic. The art of editing is important. It's not just this shot, then this shot, then this shot. Look up your J&L cuts, please. And the actors, in A Matter of Trust, seem very talented, but I just don't think this story helps them, or it doesn't really give them room to act. They're really just sitting or laying and talking most of the time. So people meeting and talking is not a movie, and structure is important. And so that's my feedback to LT Hewitt for A Matter of Trust. LT, you made something, and you should be proud of it, and everyone involved should be proud of it. There are some production design, like the rooms you shot and things like that. Some things were very colorful that I did enjoy. And you're on your way. Just keep going, keep studying filmmaking and structure.
Yeah, and the basics. Get the basics down.
Right, and sound, my man. The next time you record, the next time you shoot something, you've got to have good audio. And if you get that audio into post and there's lots of reverb, there's things you can do to at least address some of that reverb.
In post.
And loudness normalize and just all the things you're supposed to do in post. Guys, it's not just about importing your footage from your camera and then cutting it together. There's so much more involved. So,
if you don't want to do that, hire a professional editor.
yes. Or learn.
Then you don't have, you can learn or you can hire out.
YouTube is film school. You can find out how to do anything on it. So do that. So, the last film that we'll give some feedback on is Cabarrus, directed by Andrew Huggins. And Cabarrus offers a glimpse into the life of a struggling family in North Carolina. Cabarrus is a county in North Carolina, Dre.
Got it.
Yes. I had to look that up to find out exactly how to pronounce that.
Got it.
And I found the Cabarrus County School District YouTube channel and was waiting for them to tell me to say it. So,
nice.
Shout out to Cabarrus County School District
for putting out a video.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, look, Andrew's got something here. And Andrew, if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to know that I say all of this with love.
Yes.
There is a nugget of something great here in your story. However, in Matt's opinion, it's executed very poorly. Now, I want to say right off the top, for those who are not familiar with the story, this is a couple of brothers, kind of down on their luck. They have an ailing mother. There are drugs involved, and none of this ends well for anybody.
Right.
And it's a short film. And I also want to say that David Garrett as Bobby has a lot of potential, I think, with the right director or the right story. He just kind of stood out to me as...
I agree.
I'd like to see more of him in something, and there's something
there was
intangible
something
that I liked about him.
Yeah.
But overall, with Cabarrus, Cabarrus, sorry, the audio is a mess.
Yeah.
And there are missed opportunities here in sound design, and I think this is probably my biggest technical takeaway from this film is that a lot of the times in the scenes, what I felt like I was listening to was ADR over generic score and maybe a generic track of environmental sound. So if they're outside, it's almost like a Final Cut generic library of outside
Foley
sound.
stuff.
Well, not even Foley, just that generic running sound. And so there are moments where like the brothers are talking, or even when the brothers are talking, but there's a scene outside where two gentlemen are talking and then one walks away. You're outside in North Carolina. I assume walking away isn't silent.
Yeah.
So there should be a little bit of a crunch considering where they are, footsteps of some sort. There was one shot where you can see a car go by in the distance, and that's not addressed in Foley or any of the sound design. And these little things help immerse your audience so well. So I was in this exact same situation with Madison Baker was here. There was a moment, there was a very critical dialogue moment going on. And in one particular shot in the background, a car drives by. But because the girls were mic'd up in such a way and the shotgun mic was pointed in such a way, I didn't have any of that sound. But when I was in the edit and I saw that car drive by, I was like, oh my God, I've got to get sound of that car driving by. And I try to not go to the generic libraries or online sound effects of anything. If I can make it myself, I will make it myself.
Yeah.
And because it's one car going by, what I did was wait until the middle of the night. I grabbed my NTG3, my Zoom F6, my, Dead Cat and headphones and went to a street that's normally busy around us, but in the middle of the night, it's not. You can get a long run of a car just driving by. And I stood out there by the corner and waited for a car to just come driving by. And I got that sound, was able to bring it in and then work it into the sound design. Now, when I watch the film and that car comes by, it feels very natural.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in this place.
Because I feel like the cinematography of this movie wanted you immersed in these conversations. They were close,
Right.
very tight shots, not intimate conversations, but two people talking about important things.
Yeah.
And so but the sound did not match the visual.
Right.
And that's
And
a
it's
problem.
The whole of the editing in this was a massive problem. The audio that was captured, there's a lot of areas where it's so overly processed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know what they were dealing with on set. I don't know how this was dealt with in post, but it's got that processed digital sound. Like you're really doing something. You got to plug in tuned up way too high or something there. There's a moment just before the 6-minute mark where the score just drops out for no reason. It's an error, but it's not addressed.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's not addressed. If it's not an error, it's a really bad choice. But it sounds like an error where the score drops out and then restarts. And that's sloppy editing. You're not proofing your work there. There's an action sequence where afterwards the blood just looks really silly and carefully painted on.
Yeah, it just didn't look great.
Doesn't look natural at all.
And here's the thing. When you get like shot or stabbed in the chest, you don't typically bleed out of your mouth.
Hey, spoiler alert.
Just little things. Like, I get it. That's what you're going to show.
You can, but yeah.
But not at that,
you just didn't, you didn't need, we didn't really, you could have had blood on the hands.
Yep. There's other ways to show us that.
You could have bloodied up the clothes if you're going to go that far.
Yep.
The blood didn't look good, period.
Yeah.
The action was clumsy. There really was no storytelling. This was just,
it was kind of just a story being told. It was just things being told to us.
Things happened to these guys.
Yeah.
And that was it. So there was no character arc. There was no character development. There's no reason to care about either of them.
Yeah,
of the brothers.
Yeah, there are like you started out. There's nuggets of something, like the conversation between one of the sons and the mom, like that. I know it meant to be very heartfelt. And I could feel that there was something, they were really trying. Like, I could feel that there should have been something there. And there was a lot revealed in that. You know, there were things that you kind of understood his intentions for what his plans were. And you know.
Well, right. But the audio was crap. And
I know. I know.
Another thing with that scene with the mom is that you go from one scene to this scene with the mom.
Yeah.
And when you leave the previous scene, the scene with the mom starts with one of the sons sitting down. Now, we have no establishing shot. We don't know where we are. And that's fine. There's ways you can do that too. But it's this shot, and then the son sits down, and the mom starts talking. Mm-hmm. What I would have done in a pitch don't bitch kind of moment here, what I would have done instead is, as soon as that previous scene was over, cut right to the face of the mom.
Yep. Ooh, yeah. Super close.
And then have her ask a question. So now the audience is wondering, who is that? Who is she talking to? So she asked the question. Then you have the son start responding, and you see that he is in fact visiting mom because of what we were told previously. We know what this is, but that's just kind of a more interesting way to cut from one scene to the other.
Yeah.
I don't need someone entering a room and sitting down. Try to kind of, just as a general rule when you can, please, you want to start your scenes having already began and leave before the scene's over. And that's how you make scenes interesting. Put me in the middle of the conversation. I don't need the people walking up, meeting each other, and then getting into a conversation. Now, sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah.
I've done it. Everyone does it. But for this particular scene, it would have been great if we cut right to the mom's face.
Yeah.
And see her ask a question, and then, the audience is going, who is she talking to? And then you answer that question by showing the reverse.
Yeah.
Or pulling back or something creative with the camera. Speaking of the camera, a lot of this was handheld and clearly intentionally kinetic and handheld.
Yes.
But with the chaos in the audio and everything else, it just made it feel cheaper to me.
Yeah. But it does add to the struggle that they're trying to portray. I did feel like at least I guess that's what.
Well, in another
what I felt like.
bitch moment, I would say maybe the camera work for Bobby is static and on a tripod, since he's someone who more has his stuff together.
Ah, yeah.
And for his brother, it's a little more handheld.
He's a little bit of a loose cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when it's a shot from, this is Bobby waiting in a car, things are steady.
Yep.
When it's the other guy,
or checking in on the
it's just those little things that when you get old and experience,
which we are not,
you can implement more. And I think that Andrew just had an opportunity to make things more interesting in the sound design, in the camera choices.
Yep.
And Andrew, the edits gotta be more carefully approached. What am I trying to say? It needs better editing. It's a mess. Editing wise, it's a mess, especially in the audio area. This story is a tragedy, and it should be written as so. So I would recommend you study like the classical Shakespeare tragedies and study story structure and character arcs, because like I said in the beginning, there's something really good here in this film. There's talent. And you have the way things ended, like I get it.
Yeah.
Things don't end well for anybody.
Yep.
But let's earn that. Let's make it mean something. So keep learning, Andrew. Keep building your experience. Keep going. There's nothing to feel bad about. And this is certainly a worthy film festival submission. This is just the feedback that I would give you about it. So Okay, we're not going to talk about any more films, but I do have this thing I want to tell you if you've listened all the way to this point.
The intrigue.
We're offering a discount code for July for Independence Day. And the discount code, you might want to grab a pencil, kids, and write it down on your notebook pad. The code is ID4, the number 4, IndieEye 30. That's ID4, IndieEye 30. And that'll give you 30% off your submission fees for any category in July, starting July 1st through July 22nd.
Cool.
It's unlimited. Okay. For that whole 22 days of July, you can get 30% off. So if you have something, maybe you've already submitted something, but maybe you have something in the archives and you want to see how it stacks up in July, here's 30% off for you. 30% off will count for any category, your subcategories. It counts if you're a Film Freeway Gold member, it counts on the gold fee, so you're saving even more money. But ID4 IndieEye 30 gets you 30% off your submission fees from July 1st through July 22nd. Cool. You can tell a friend, that's fine.
That's cool.
But this code is for those of you who have listened all the way through and have something else to submit, or maybe you do know someone who wants to submit. They can use that code.
And tell them to listen to the podcast too.
Yeah, whatever. Well, speaking of podcasts, let me give myself a shout out. Also, feel free to go check out Take 22, a media production podcast, which is my own little podcast about my freelance gigs and my own indie filmmaking. And if you want to give crazy critical feedback about my work, you can go watch Madison Baker Was Here on Amazon Prime Video and then talk about that. But my last episode of Take 22, I got to have a great conversation with one of the actors from Madison Baker Was Here, so you should listen to that.
Yep. It's Take 22.
Take 22.
Also a podcast just like this one.
Thank you. And again, go watch The Alpines.
Yeah, it's fun.
Mally Corrigan and Dante Aubane, yes, they're friends of ours. Yes, they've won a bunch of awards through IndieEye, and they don't need any more love and accolades. But if you just want to see what you can do as an indie filmmaker with a relatively small budget, one location, not a lot of time, they pulled it off really well.
Yeah.
So that's it for IndieEye for June. Have a great Independence Day holiday, and we'll see you guys next month.
Cool. Bye.
If you'd like your project discussed on the podcast, go to IndieEyeFilmAwards.com and submit to our open monthly competition. Find us on Instagram and YouTube, IndieEye Film Awards. Thanks for listening to this episode of IndieEye.